I don't always bring out notes with me, but Glenna, our next storyteller, has something very specific in her bio that I wanted to make sure that I nail so that everyone can relate to this. So Glenna is also a storyteller that has been a part of all three organizations, and she's beloved. Glenna is also the only storyteller with Guts and Glory GNV who has done a read-through of a story where it's just been me and the storyteller, Glenna, and no one else at my house. Well, I've been sitting on a couch and Glenna just tells me this story in front of me while I'm weeping and like reaching for Kleenex. That's really intimate, you guys. But that's where Glenna is coming from. We usually do these things in groups, right? But Glenna is that confident and powerful and beautiful in her work. So Glenna, our next storyteller, so for Glenna, her storytelling is about revealing times in her life when she wasn't sure of herself and didn't always trust the outcome of her own decisions. Can we all relate to that a little bit? Maybe a little bit. This is why I brought out my notes. When she tells stories, Glenna gets to go back and unfold the memories of her stumbling through life with good intentions and forced courage. Isn't that a great way of saying it? And sometimes she gets to smile at how she made life a little bit harder than it needs to be. I think you'll hear in Glenna's story and in her delivery that she has a very special way of engaging listeners in her own experience and her own life, but also telling a beautiful story about someone who has reached her. So let's welcome Glenna.
When our son was a little boy, he went to Walmart with me one time, and I picked up a card to look at it. I let go of his hand and opened the card, and when I looked back down, he was gone. And I panicked. I went running around the store looking for him, and I ran into a guy with a blue vest at Walmart, and he said, "Don't worry, go to the toy department. That's where they always are." So I went to the toy department.
I love you this much.
Thank you.
I love you so much.
Okay. I went to the toy department and...
I'm sorry. I messed up your flow. We need to hear you.
Okay, great. Is that better? Yeah. Okay, lost my son in Walmart, 2 years old, and went to the toy department. They said that's where all the lost kids end up, but he wasn't there. And I was panicking, running all around the store, just getting ready to go to the office to have them page him somehow. And I ran by the tool department, and there he was, 2 years old, holding a big pinball hammer. And he looked up at me and he said, "Look, hammer." He loved tools. Even as a little kid, he loved tools. Other kids carried a teddy bear. He had a little red plastic hammer that he slept with. So he spent a lot of time in the shop. He was an only child. Spent a lot of time in his father's woodworking shop when his dad was in there, and he would glue little pieces of wood together and build things, screw things together. He loved tools, and so when he was about 7 years old, his dad said, "Here is a 2-horsepower old engine from a riding lawnmower. Take that apart." And so he did. Later on, a few years later, friends in the farm near us got a go-kart, and so he decided that he wanted a go-kart, but his dad had this philosophy that said, "Don't ever buy anything if you can make one." And so they found another old riding lawnmower in the barn. They pulled that out. It was a riding lawnmower that didn't work because you couldn't cut anything because the cutting part of it was just unfixable. So they made a cart which became known affectionately as the Mo-Kart. So maybe when he was 10 years old, his dad said, "I see that at Santa Fe they have this course in small motor repair. Let's take that course." So they took it together. they had a good time. Things went along pretty normally. And then when he was in his, I guess, early teens, maybe 13 or 14, I noticed these motorcycle magazines accumulating in his room. I didn't think too much about it, but then I noticed a couple of times he would bring books home from school, like his history book, some of these big books, and there would be a motorcycle magazine hidden in there, marking the pages. And of course, his teachers were starting to notice that too in school. And so I didn't know anything about motorcycles. I've never ridden a motorcycle. Nobody in my family ever had a motorcycle, and I just didn't know anybody who rode one. And so, there are certain things that go together, there's like beer and pizza and ice cream and cake and salt and pepper and death and motorcycles. And that was how I pretty much felt about motorcycles. And so I didn't say much, but the looks on my face sort of said it all when he would be reading his motorcycle magazines, and he would really read these the way you read a fine novel. And so I would make those faces that mothers make, like, or. And of course the sounds that would go along with those faces, like, or. That nasal breathing, mothers, you have a baby, you know how to do that. And so there was this loud silence when it came to motorcycles. So one day he came to me, he was about 15, he came to me and he said, I really need to talk to you about something. I don't expect to change your mind, and I don't want you to say anything. So we sat down, and this is what he said. He said, I love everything about motorcycles. I dream about riding motorcycles and working on motorcycles and racing motorcycles. And I feel like my life is passing me by and I'm not getting to live my dream. Okay. I didn't say anything. So through the next week, it was a pretty hard week. You know how in Indiana Jones, in Raiders, there's this big pit, and he throws the torch down in there, and he looks down, and it's full of snakes, and he looks back in the camera, and he says, snakes? Why did it have to be snakes? Well, that's how I felt. Motorcycles. Why did it have to be motorcycles? But I kept hearing those words. I feel like my life is passing me by and I'm not getting to live my dream. Oh my gosh. I think my greatest fear was that he would get hurt, right? The whole thing, death in motorcycles. But I also came to have another fear. And that other fear was that if I said absolutely not, that one day he would turn 18 and he would get on a motorcycle with no experience, and he would ride away from me on a motorcycle. So I went back to him about a week later and I said, I think we need to talk. There's something I want to say. So we sat down and I said, what I want you to know is that I heard what you said about how much you love motorcycles and how you dream about riding them and working on them and racing them. And what I want you to know is that I'm not going to buy you a motorcycle. But if you could make that happen, I'm not going to stand in the way of your dream, because a dream is a wonderful thing to have. Maybe 6 months later, he bought a motorcycle for $25. It was in really bad shape. It was not even the kind of motorcycle he wanted, but he would order the parts. He got a manual for it, and he ordered the parts from Strites. And we would go up to Strites and get parts, and he would work on this motorcycle, and he got it running. And then he bought another motorcycle for $45 that was also a wreck. So the plan was to buy and fix motorcycles and then buy a motorcycle. And so that's what he did. So with all those trips to Strites, eventually one day he walked in there. He was about 16. And the owner of Strites said, "You know, you keep coming in here. When are you going to come to work for us?" And he laughed, thinking no such wonderful thing could ever happen to 16. And the owner said, "No, I'm not kidding. We need somebody to take out the trash, and do stuff, kind of help around." So he was thrilled. He went to work there, taking out the trash, and then they let him start doing things like putting the handlebars on the motorcycles when they came in. They don't come in with handles, evidently. He got to put the gas in the motorcycles and the oil in there. And then he got to ride the motorcycles around in the back lot to just put them through the gears, He worked there for almost a month, and finally they came to him one day and they said, "We pay you to work here, and you haven't been picking up your checks." So eventually he started racing motorcycles, gator back, I did help with the safety gear, the helmet, and some of those things. I did buy some of those. Can't go out on the track without those things. So he would say to me, "Mom, you don't need to worry about a thing." He said, the paramedics and the emergency vehicles are there. Okay. So when he went to race his motorcycles, I never told him to be careful, because I grew up in a family where my parents told us to be careful about everything. They would say, "Don't take any chances, be so careful, you never know what can happen." And I didn't want him to take my fear out on the motorcycle racetrack. I wanted him to go out there, and as he explained to me, if you know anything about motocross, they have these huge mounds of dirt, one after another. Well, you don't just jump one and ride it down. You have to go up this one with enough speed to go flying over and land on the other side. And so as he explained to me, "Mom, when you're going up, you have to pin it. You have to give it all. You have to open that throttle wide so that you can make the jump." Now, I know you're wondering, did the day ever come when there was an accident? Well, yes, as a matter of fact, one time I was in the garage and I backed into a motorcycle, and I have the scar, a hot pipe, and I have the scar to prove it. But that's not what you're wondering about. Yes, one day we did get a call from Monroe Regional Hospital saying, "Meet us in the emergency room, but it's not life-threatening." And so, those double, compound fractures do crazy things. They go through the skin and stick in the mud, and then they go back in, very complicated. So that slowed him down a little bit, but didn't break his love, didn't really change things. So he continued to race. He made a name for himself, and all the time he'd graduated from high school, he was in college, he was working at Strikes, he became their top mechanic, and then he started going around the state and taking extra courses and all those things, if I can remember, like exhaust systems and electrical systems, and there's probably people here who know more about that. But at any rate, all kinds of things to get better equipped to work on motorcycles. And he'd go out of state to do those too. And so the word started getting around, and a famous bicycle company wanted to make a prototype of a motorcycle, and they needed somebody to work on motorcycles, race motorcycles, and help design a track. So he went to North Carolina, and he did that for quite some time. And then Suzuki in California heard about him. They said, "We understand from some of our people that we need to hire you." And so he went to California, and he worked for Suzuki on their race team, their superbike race team. He worked with Matt Mladen, a 7-time champion, national champion, traveled all over the United States. He traveled internationally a good bit too. He went to Malaysia and Australia and Japan and Spain. So he's traveled, he's made a life of motorcycles. And he's been pretty successful at it. He's made more money than I ever made, for sure. But most of all, he's lived his dream. And so when your children talk to you about what they are excited about, what they're interested in, what they care about more than anything, when they talk about their dreams, listen, because a dream is a wonderful thing to have, and you never know where it might take them. Thank you.